大家好, kumusta? My name is Victor, and in today's video, I want to show you guys how to seamlessly match your footage. Doesn't matter if it's coming from a Sony camera, from a DJI drone, Red camera, whatever it is. Now I'm going to try and make it as beginner friendly as I can so everyone can follow. Now we're going to be using DaVinci Resolve on this one. Now it's always good practice to have the same cameras, same camera profiles, but in reality, you're going to get jobs that have a main camera and then a different B camera, for example, an FX6, and you have to match your FX30 with it. And I thought this was going to be helpful for everyone so that they can match seamlessly with any cameras they use. Okay, so right here we have DaVinci Resolve open. I have clips. I've got some drone footage from Storyblogs, random footage from another destination that I went to in Thailand, and then some of the shots that I gotten from A7 IV. And same thing, another drone shot. And we're just gonna go over everything step by step. First step is color space transform. You kind of want to match all the footage into a single color space. That means that you're going to have to convert your Rec 709 to S-Log3. But in this case, we're going to use ARRI Log-C because it's going to give you a little bit more flexibility. But depends on the camera. You're not going to have the dynamic range of an ARRI camera if you're using a Sony FX30 or a Sony A7 IV. But we've got techniques to match them all up. So we're going to look for the color space transform from here. I think this one is from a newer DJI drone. It's not necessarily D-Log, so I think this is decent. We're gonna add a little bit more saturation on this one because I feel like it's just lacking a little bit. Okay, perfect. And then a little bit of the adjustment on here. We're gonna go D-Cine like adjust, and then this will be our CST. Okay, and we're gonna go like that. And since it's decent alike, we're just gonna treat it as Rec 709 because we kind of adjusted it to that color space. And since this one doesn't have a decent alike profile, it's just DJI D-Log, we're just gonna do Rec 709. And then this one would be Gamma 2.4. And then we're gonna go ARRI wide gamut. And then it's right here. ARRI Log-C. So now we're going to be in the ARRI Log space. You can use S-Log3 if you want as well. But for me, I've been testing out the ARRI Log-C with my Sony footage, and it's a lot better. So now what we're going to do is just add a few different nodes here for our adjustment. And I'm just going to put some placeholder. And then this is going to be our conversion. And then just going to add a few more nodes in there for effects. And then what we're going to do with the Rec 709 conversion is that we are going to go to ARRI Log-C, Rec 709. Now we've got the footage normalized. Now, before we move on, I just want to explain the node tree so that you know the placement of each node and how to adjust every single thing. I've explained this to my other color grading videos as well, but it's always nice to review just in case you've missed anything. So we're just going to copy this one. Since this one is decent alike, we're just going to make it simple. We're going to apply grade. We don't need the decent alike adjust because I think that this one is straight Rec 709 color profile. So from here, we're just going to do Rec 709 straight to conversion. Now, our node tree starts from your Rec 709 conversion to your ARRI Log-C or S-Log3. Whatever log color space that you want to work on, this is where you start. And then this conversion node brings it back to Rec 709. The reason why we do this is because any adjustments in between is utilizing the color space that you're in. That means that you can create more looks. It's more flexible when you're trying to adjust the exposures. And if you just try to edit using Rec 709, you can see that the footage can fail very quickly. Since that we're just cheating the color space, this is the best that we can, especially if we don't know what camera it came from. So this part right here is going to be your exposure adjustments, your looks, your white balance, your color grading, and then everything after the second conversion to Rec 709 is your effects. That means that it's your glow, your halation, your film grain, whatever you want to add to kind of just mesh everything up. All right, so let's do the color matching. I'm just going to put everything into ARRI Log-C. And I'm just going to apply grade on this one. I'm going to delete this one. And then since I know this one is from the Sony A7 IV, we're going to change the input color space to S-Gamma3.Cine and then S-Log3. And then this is another Sony, so we're just gonna apply grade on these ones. Perfect. So first things first, I'm going to try and do my grade in the most used color space or camera, which is the A7 IV. We have 3 A7 IV clips, 1 unknown clip and 1 from a DJI drone. So I'm going to work on this one first so that it serves as our base in terms of color matching everything in this sequence. All right, so this is going to be my exposure, and that I kind of want it a little brighter and crushed a little bit of shadows in there, midtones a little bit higher, bring down the highlights a little bit, and then we're gonna go saturation, and I'm just gonna add a little bit more saturation in there. That looks good. Nothing's peaking, as you can see in the vector scope, and then we're just gonna leave this as white balance for now. Okay, now I'm just gonna copy these two S-Log3, and this is a little bit different. We're gonna keep it a little bit bright on the highlights and make sure that it's sort of around the same area as the highlights on this one. So it's like 896, and we're gonna keep it around that area as well. Now for the shadows, I think we're okay. Keep it here and then bring it up just a tiny bit. So we have a little bit more contrast on there. Now for this one, this is kind of like an overexposed scene. So we're just gonna bring down the midtones a tiny bit. And then make sure that your highlights aren't clipping. We're gonna bring it down to maybe just a tad over that 896 line. And then we're gonna give it a little bit more contrast because this is a hard contrast scene, which is totally fine. And now we're matching. You can see that the histogram parade, that the exposure is a little bit more consistent now in between these 3 clips. With the exposure, we're gonna get that highlights a little bit closer to the 896 line, and then bring down the midtones just a tiny bit. And of course, we're gonna bring down the shadows. Okay, let's check it out. Okay. This area right here is actually the same area as this one. It's just a different side of the place. We're gonna try to match this green right here with this green. And I think we're fairly close, to be quite honest. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna match the sky a little bit because this shot has a little bit more blue sky. And then we're just gonna increase the saturation just a little bit so that you can see everything. We're gonna go to hue versus saturation, and we're gonna click on the blue area right here and make sure that your points are kind of wide enough so that the gradient is pretty smooth. And then we're just gonna bring it closer to that gray sky. Now to sell this effect even more, since this one is a little bit overblown on the highlights, it's almost peaking. What we're gonna do is go to hue versus luminance, and we're just gonna get this again and make sure that the points are wide enough. And we're just gonna give that a little bit of a pop into that highlight. So now this is before, this is after, and we are looking almost like we are matching the footage. Okay, let's see about the greens. The greens are super close, but we're just going to give it a little desaturation. And I feel like the green, the deep greens on here are matching. Right. Okay, perfect. All right, so we've got all 4 files matched up. We're just gonna match it with the drone as well. And I think we're super close because we're just gonna match this guy right here to this green. Because I remember when we drove past this roundabout that is just a little bit more greener. So what we're gonna do is we are going to do saturation, and then we're gonna go to that hue versus hue. Click on that one, make sure it's wide enough. And we're just gonna add a little bit more green into it. That's perfect. It doesn't need to go all the way, because if you see, if we push it a little bit more, then it's like digital green. But then just subtly add that green into there. It still looks natural. We also have another point of reference, which is this orange bus. And that what we're going to do is we're going to hue versus saturation. And then we're just going to eyedrop that. Make sure again that it's wide enough. And push that saturation a little bit. And this one is like closer to red, I think. Orange. And then we're going to go to hue versus hue. We're going to click that again. And then we're just going to add a little bit of a punch. A little bit of a red addition into there. And to just subtract a little bit of a brightness in there, we're going to go to hue and illuminance. Eyedrop that and then give that a little bit of a pull down. And I think we're matching. Perfect. Okay. And then let's just look at the exposure. Exposure is pretty good. Just going to bring down the shadows just a little bit. Actually, I don't need to. Give the midtones just a boost. And I think to really sell this is that we kind of want to clean the yellows on this one. That means that we're going to do another adjust, saturation, yellow wash. And then we're going to go to hue versus saturation, click on this, and then we can kind of remove that yellow to make it a little bit more white. And it's sort of just matching with our next clip. It doesn't need to be super clean. It just needs to, it doesn't need to be super clean. We just need to really get some visual references for the next shots. That means that this one, we can visually reference the greens, this orange bus, and the white structures on here as well. And then we have the skies to match, and that's pretty much it. That's the majority of the work to match up your footage. Now the cherry on top would be color grading. We're just gonna give this a little bit of a boost so that we have a little bit more cohesiveness. Now if you're wanting a clean look, this is it. Now we're just gonna add 2 nodes on here, which is my LUT adjust and then my own creative LUT. So we're gonna turn this on again. And then we're going to go sunset film. I'm going to add my film base on there. This is before, this is after. It just gives you a little greener vibe. You can also add high key white if you want, Fuji green, mono black, whatever you want to add. But for me, film base is my favorite. So we're going to attach that. Now, if you don't want to color grade or just don't have the creative LUTs to create the look that you're specifically searching for, this video is sponsored by Film Convert, and let me show you how their plugins apply to what we're doing today and get that creative cinematic film look. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new node and add that film convert nitrate. And this is going to serve as our conversion LUT, because on top under camera settings, it asks you for a camera profile, which they have most of the manufacturers that we use. And that is actually super detailed. Let's just say we go to the A7 IV and you have all the picture profiles and settings over here. So it's a more detailed conversion so that you're getting the best look for your image. So now that we change the color space to ARRI log C, what we're going to do is we're just going to go to ARRI and then Alexa Mini and then log C. We're just going to pretend that we're shooting with Alexa Minis because why not? Okay, and hit apply. And now we've got this new beautiful look with the film stock. Now for the film stocks, they have a bunch. This is what creates your film look, and that they have 2 of my favorite film stocks. That is Kodak Vision 3 250D. They also have the tungsten counterpart, which is this guy, and Kodak Portra 400. So now let's perfect this look on our footage. Now they have an overlay as well. So this is the film response, kind of just to adjust the exposure. Since the highlight is way too overblown, we're just gonna give it a little bit of a pull down. And then we're gonna push up the shadows a little bit so that we get the latitude of the film stock. They have the grain response curve right here for your shadows, midtones, and highlights. I don't usually mess with this unless you really want to get detailed. And then also color wheels if you want to get in depth with a specific look. So on here, we can turn the highlights to be more yellow and then the shadows to be cooler. But I just like the default look of this film stock. It's looking good. This is what we started with. And then this is what the Kodak Portra 400 looks like on this footage. On here, you can adjust the film color, and then the Cineon print to film is like your intensity of that film stock. But in my opinion, just leave it at 100 and you should be good to go. And then film size, you have different ones. We're gonna stick with 35mm full frame. Let's just say we did 16mm. It's just gonna soften up a little bit of the image so that it matches that 16mm look. Okay, now for grain strength, this is self-explanatory. Let's leave it at maybe 80%. That's good. And if we do 0, okay, 75. Grain size, I like it a little bit bigger. Perfect. That looks good. Saturation, I just leave it at that. And then on the levels, you've got the black point. It just pivots your black point all the way down, or your midpoint and the white point as well. So here's our footage with the Kodak Portra. Just really adds to the whole overall feel, and that the film grain actually kind of matches up all the footage and it looks like it's coming from the same camera. Now they also have another plugin called Cinematch. Is just matching the different types of cameras that you have. You might want to match in Sony a7 IV with an ARRI Log-C, and you can do so. We're just going to turn this off, and you can do so with the Cinematch. And then we're going to go sensor match, which is your Sony a7 IV, and then we're going to do S-Log3 S-Gamma3.Cine, apply, and we're going to target it with the ARRI Alexa Mini Log-C. So now let's look at the difference. This is the Cinematch, and this is your standard TST. Now, I like Cinematch because it's a little bit more accurate to the actual cameras, and that it gives you a pop of that color. Color space transform on the DaVinci Resolve is a little bit more desaturated, and the greens aren't really matching what an ARRI would look like. And then Cinematch really just sells that effect even more. The colors are richer, and it just looks like it's a lot more high-end in terms of your colors. Film Convert is actually giving everyone this channel 10% off for both of their plugins. That is Film Convert Nitrate and Cinematch. So if you're interested, click on the links down below. What we're going to do now is we're going to do another run with a different set of clips. This is now just this building from Bangkok, the swimming pool, another pool shot, and then another pool shot. So this one is actually an HD file. I'm going to teach you guys how to kind of match it with the other 4K files that we have on this series. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this, apply grade. I think that this one is decent alike as well. So we're going to keep this adjustment right here, and we're going to go with the white balance. We're going to go with the exposure adjustment over here. And then we're going to delete this yellow wash because we don't need it. Now, what I think that we should do on this shot is to adjust the white balance. I'm just going to give it a little bit more of orange or warmer tones, and it should be back to neutral. Okay, and then this is without the LUT. This is with the LUT. And then from this on, this is your Sony a7 IV. So we're just going to apply the grade on this one. We're just going to adjust the exposure. We're going to reset this. We're going to turn off the LUT. And then we're going to turn off the glow and everything. Now, a good reference point is your histogram. Always look at this. And if you compare it to this guy, you can see that how much it's affected by everything. So now we're just going to bring this down a little bit and give that saturation back. And that's good. And then if we look at our S-Log file, we just need to broaden this up a little bit and then get that shadows back in there so that we utilize the full color spectrum. That's good. I think we're matching super close enough with this guy. Okay, and then I'm just gonna apply the grade on this one. This one was a little bit later during the day, so we're just gonna add a little bit of the blue in there to match that time of the day. Okay, and then the exposure needs to be brought up a little bit. And if we look at the histogram, we're super close to what we are looking at. Okay, same thing with this one. I'm just gonna apply the grade and make sure that everything is looking good. We're gonna lift the shadows on this one and make sure that the highlights aren't overblown. That's good. This light is a little bit stronger though, so now this one is your Rec 709. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna copy this guy, and then we're gonna turn off everything first. CST, this is going to be your Rec 709. Rec 709, and then Gamma 2.4. And we're gonna turn on this LUT. Perfect. You can see that this we need to do some adjustments on this one. Bring up the shadows a little bit. So in this case, we can't fully bring out the blacks because the camera, I think this is an older DJI drone. It doesn't have enough dynamic range. So we're just gonna stick with this one, because if we keep pushing, you're gonna see that there's really no information on the blacks, on the shadows. So we're just gonna keep the levels up with the parts that have information, and then we're just gonna reference everything on here. This one is actually a little bit too lifted, so we're gonna bring it down a tad. That's perfect. Okay, and then this one, we'll just leave it at that. The highlights are a little bit overblown, so we're just gonna bring it down. That's perfect. So we have greens to reference from the older shot, from the previous shot, so we're gonna do that as well. We're gonna play around with the saturation. And this one is almost there. I just think that we need to get rid of the saturation. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to hue versus hue, get a shot of that, and just add a little bit of yellow. So if we push it down, it's going to add a little bit more green. If we push it up, it's going to add a little bit of that yellow. And then again, hue versus luminance. And we're just going to give it a little bit of that darker vibe. And then we're going to go back to exposure, bring down the midtones just a tiny bit. And if we look at the previous file right here, I think we're almost there. We just need to play around with the saturation on this one. I think we just need a little bit less saturated. This is it. We've got those dark greens on there, and then we can match it over here. We just need a little bit more saturation on the greens. That's good. Perfect. Okay. So now that we've got the greens out of the way, we're gonna match all the blues now. On the drone footage, the blues are a little bit more saturated, so we're gonna bring that down, make sure the points are wide enough so that the gradient is smooth. Put it down a little bit. And down a little bit. I think that's good. And we're gonna adjust the highlights a tiny bit more to match the Sony. All right. And then this is where we kind of change the blue to match this pool and then this pool. These two are matching pretty good. And we're just gonna match this one for that blue. Just be careful though that it's going to change the blue on the sky as well. So what we want to do next is change the blue on the pool. So we're just going to reset this pool, adjust, and then what happens is that if we click this, now we can change the color of the blue to a little bit deeper blue, and then add that saturation. into there. Now what happens on this one, if you change it, is that the blue on the sky on the overall image kind of changes as well. So what you want to do is to have this as a mask. Since this is an easy mask, what we can do is size it up and bring it down. There you go. So now we're only affecting the pool area. So now this is still a little bit too blue. We're just going to, I think these two are almost close enough. And then we're just going to adjust the blue on this one. Since this is a static shot, this is also an easy fix. Pull, adjust. We're just going to do this. And we're good. Give it a little bit of softness in there. And we're going to play around with the color. Make it a little bit deeper blue. Perfect. It's actually teal, more teal. So we're going to change this up a little bit as well. Pull, adjust. And we're going to adjust the blue to a little bit more teal. Now everything is matching. Perfect. You also want to kind of track this as well so that it's not changing your sky. Once we track it, everything's there. I think it just needs to be a little bit bigger because we are tilting. Try it again. That's perfect. Okay. Maybe the blue on this one is a little bit too much. So what we're going to do is pull that and add a tiny bit of blue in there instead of green. And now we have all the footage matching. Skies are good. The sky is good on this one as well. And then the pool are very, very nice. What we're going to do right after the LUT is we're going to add a blur because, again, this is from a tiny drone. And we're going to add Gaussian blur on there just to get rid of the super sharpness of the image. That's perfect, especially with the trees. What we're going to do is we're going to give the center a little bit more sharpness. So we're going to invert that. And we're just going to give it a little bit of this. Perfect. And then copy this to another one. And then invert this so that we have a little bit more of that softer look, but sharp in the middle. That's it. I know this is a long tutorial, but an explanation is needed for each part and to help you understand every single step. If you have any questions at all, feel free to comment down below. And as usual, I'm giving away my Sunset Film LUT pack, and all I have to do to win is comment down below. What are your thoughts on matching the footage? Do you have any other techniques? Let me know in the comments down below and share with everyone else. Now, if you haven't seen how I color grade my videos, click on this video right here. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
너와 나